What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So Apple has just announced that there will be a special event on the first week of March, and this will be Apple's first ever spring event since, I believe, the last time they did one was 2022, if I remember correctly. So Apple has made it official. They have been sending various invites, specifically for this date, Wednesday, March 4th, 2026. Scheduled in cities such as New York, Shanghai, and London. And this is expected to be a pretty big event, as there will be a bunch of new products that are expected to come on that week. I mean, there are a shit ton of products that are expected to be announced in that event. However, these aren't necessarily like, big deal, huge upgrades that we will be expecting. A lot of these are more just, budget products and products that already exist, but are just getting, minor updates like chip updates, the new M5, the whole shebang. There's going to be a budget MacBook, an updated iPhone 17e. So nothing overwhelmingly exciting, but still exciting nevertheless. So I'm gonna do my best to talk about each and every single product that we will be expecting in this event coming, I believe, as of recording next week. So this one's pretty soon. So in this video, we're gonna be talking about the iPhone 17e and all the MacBooks that are expected to come out later next week. That includes the M5 MacBook Air, the M5 Pro, and the M5 Max, and the soon-to-come cheaper MacBook that we will say for the end of this video. But let's not waste time here, and let's start things off with the iPhone 17e. Now, don't expect anything, super major with the iPhone 17e. Now, the iPhone 16e, I will admit, was not necessarily, the best value insofar as a budget smartphone is concerned. It's a $600 iPhone that lacked MagSafe, had quite a few issues with the C1 modem, no dynamic island, and the lackluster color options. So very, very limited, especially when you see phones that are much cheaper that have dual cameras, high refresh rate screens, all those other stuff. The 16e did not have any of that. And besides, I already have my problems with Apple Intelligence. Now, thankfully, Apple is expected to take what's from the iPhone 16e and improve it into the iPhone 17e. Improve on what was already good from the iPhone 16e and, add some other features that were missing from it, upgrade the camera, upgrade the chip, and you're done. Now, design-wise, nothing's changing. Same design, same single camera, same fucking everything. However, it will have the same 48 megapixel fusion camera that is found on the iPhone 17e, or rather, iPhone Air. Although, to be fair, if I were to describe the iPhone 17e, it would basically be an iPhone Air with a less powerful chip and the same design as the iPhone 16e. So you'll be getting the A19 chip in there, you'll be getting the C1X modem, maybe even the C2 modem, though that is unconfirmed and they might be saving that later in the year for the iPhone 18 Pro. And the C1X already is an improvement of the Apple C1 modem, so battery life will be just as good, if not better, on the iPhone 17e compared to the 16e, and you will be getting 2 additional features that were missing from the previous 16e that should be coming to the 17e. Number 1 would be MagSafe. Now, if you remember, one of my biggest complaints with the iPhone 16e is the lack of MagSafe. Quite literally every single iPhone since the iPhone 12 series, since the 2020s decade, has had MagSafe, with the exception of the iPhone SEs, but really, nobody actually cares about those anymore. But it was such a big deal that the iPhone 16e did not come with MagSafe, which is literally the standard for the entire iPhone 16 lineup, and again, every single iPhone that was released since 2020, since the iPhone 12 lineup. So most people, including myself, found this to be completely preposterous that a budget phone does not have this feature that is already standard in literally every iPhone. Why the fuck doesn't it have MagSafe? So thankfully that will be coming to the 17e, that will be getting MagSafe. I don't know if it will be getting the same MagSafe as the iPhone 17 lineup, maybe a lesser powerful version of it, but the important thing is the 17e will be getting MagSafe. The other feature that was missing is Dynamic Island. Now, the iPhone 16e had just the notch, So no cool little animations on the top of your screen, no live activities, no cool pop-ups that are not intrusive, none of that stuff because, well, there was no dynamic island. Literally every single iPhone since the 14 Pro has had dynamic island, and the SE, or rather the E lineup, lacked the dynamic island. So iPhone 17e, that should be getting the dynamic island. It should be getting the Ceramic Shield 2 that is throughout the rest of the iPhone 17 lineup. So that's pretty much it. Very small, but still a reasonable upgrade over the 16E. Definitely an improvement, I will say, for the least. Then we get into the MacBooks. Now, I will start off by talking about the M5 MacBook Air. Now, I've never really been a MacBook Air type of guy. I'm more of a MacBook Pro type of guy. We will talk about that. But the MacBook Airs have always been sort of like this perfect middle ground for Mac notebooks. They're sort of like the Goldilocks of laptops. Not too much, not too little, thin design, and they pretty much already come with what you already need anyway. Now, this MacBook Air design that we've got since the M2 MacBook Air, I personally have always been a fan of. You know, thin, light, powerful, comes in a bunch of cool colors, it's got a really good screen for what it's worth, and if you are a fan of this design already, it will be staying with the M5 MacBook Air. Now, this MacBook Air is expected to come with the all-new M5 chip. Now, Apple Silicon is quite literally the best thing to ever happen to the Mac. And I'm not even over-exaggerating. Like, going from an Intel Mac to an Apple Silicon Mac is like going from Tyreek Hill to Rainbow Dash. Or it's like comparing a cheetah to Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm not even exaggerating saying this. Like, the differences between the two are just phenomenal. And Apple has already made huge improvements with the M5 chip. I mean, we're talking a 4500 single-core score on Geekbench. The M1 chip, by the way, scores about 1500 on Geekbench in single-core score, which was already a humongous leap compared to the leading Intel chips at the time. So Apple really has done a good job with Apple Silicon, and they have improved on it year over year over year, and the M5 being the latest iteration, it's built on their 3nm process. They basically advertise this as a huge improvement when it comes to AI workloads. They also implement some of the neural accelerators into the GPU chip, so AI workloads are already so much better there. But this base M5 is what we should be expecting in this MacBook Air. A 10-core CPU and a 10-core GPU, and since this is a thinner machine, the MacBook Air will be fanless, which is pretty neat because you don't really need a fan to use Apple Silicon because of how efficient it is. The only downside being, thermal throttling. But, even without a fan, Apple Silicon is still very powerful and a very capable chip even without a fan. And they've used it in the current generation MacBook Pro already, at least in the base 14-inch model, as well as in the latest iPad Pro as well. And again, we've seen the scores of that chip, 4500 on a single core and about 15,000 on the multi-core. So for an ultra-thin laptop, this should be a very capable and powerful machine. And, if you want to try out Apple Silicon yourself, I recommend getting the MacBook Air and getting this model in particular. It's a very good middle ground to choose between the more powerful MacBook Pros and the upcoming budget MacBook, which we will say for the end of this video, like I said earlier. So that's where we move on to the next MacBooks that we're going to be seeing, the M5 Pro and the M5 Max. Now, these are the 14 and 16-inch variations of the MacBook Pro that we already have. Last fall, Apple quietly released the M5 MacBook Pro, though something was clearly missing. There was no M5 Pro and M5 Max versions of the newly released M5 chip. Now, as someone who obviously is clearly looking for a new laptop right now, these are the ones that I'm looking at. I've pretty much wasted time hoping that these MacBooks would come out in January, in February, maybe it will come out on this day with Apple Creator Studio or on that day, but it never, really materialized. But, with this event happening, now we know that they are coming right alongside these other MacBooks. Now, design-wise, they're going to be exactly the same. It's the same old design that we've had since 2021, with the notch, the mini LED screen, that fucking cool as fuck space black color. I've pretty much always liked this design already. So if there was one upcoming MacBook that I will get, it would be this one. Because I like this design already, and really don't give a fuck or shit about what new design comes out. Yes, I like the fact that the next one is getting an OLED screen, but I don't know about you guys, I don't want to have a laptop that comes with a touchscreen. Touchscreen laptops are literally the most gimmicky, overrated thing that I have ever seen. Now, you can already tell that we are not getting an OLED display in the M5 Pro and M5 Max. That's coming for the M6 lineup. Yes, I'd much prefer an OLED display over a mini LED display, but I don't know, having a super thin laptop where the screen is also a touchscreen, that's a deal breaker. So I'd rather not have a MacBook that has a touchscreen. That's what the iPad is for. So now that I'm done with that little crash out, let's talk about the M5 Pro and the M5 Max. These should be more geared towards pro users, so graphic designers, video editors, programmers, content creators, webmasters, gamers even. This is what these MacBook Pros are more geared towards. And that's where the Pro and Max chips come in. They are physically larger chips that have a lot more CPU cores, a lot more GPU cores. They support a lot more RAM, a lot more storage. These are meant to be pro-level chips for the ones who need the most out of their Mac. And we have yet to see the M5 variants of those chips. Now, I heard a theory that is going around saying that Apple's going to add a little bit more customization to the M5 chips. I heard that there was like some stuff that data miners found in the iOS 26.3 beta code that specifically mentions the Max and the Ultra variants of the M5, but not the Pro, leading to speculation that the Pro chip is just a watered-down Max chip with less CPU cores, less GPU cores. It's the same size chip, but with less everything, like it's nerfed, if you know what I mean. Suggesting that it's going to be using a 2.5D structure on how the chip is manufactured. What's that mean? Well, you could potentially change the CPU and the GPU cores specifically. Like you could have a Pro CPU but a Max GPU, or vice versa. You could have an M5 Max CPU but don't necessarily need all that power in the GPU, so you just go with the Pro binned GPU. I mean, I kind of understand it, but even I struggle to explain how it works. The M5 Pro being a nerfed M5 Max, and you can change how many CPU cores and GPU cores that you have. You can have like a Pro CPU and a Max GPU. I'm sure they're going to have John Cerrugi explain how that works in the event. I'm sure he can explain it a lot better than I can. But nevertheless, these are super powerful chips. We're talking about the improvements from the M4 series to the M5 series, but in the Pro and Max chips. So apply what we already know with the M5 chip, and then just put it to the Pro and Max versions of these. That's a big improvement. The M5 Pro could have upwards to 16 cores and 18 cores, 16 cores being binned and 18 cores being unbinned, and we could be getting upwards to a 42 to 44 core GPU. That's already crazy. For a Pro chip, that's unbelievable. Then, when you move on to the M5 Max, which is the biggest and the baddest of the M5 lineup, we're talking even more insane numbers, according to rumors. That being an 18 to a 20 core CPU. 18 core being binned, 20 core being unbinned. So, if my math's correct, that means we should have 4 efficiency cores and 14 performance cores. That's for the binned version. The unbinned will have 16 performance cores. 20 cores. That is a lot for a CPU. And the GPU is where things really get insane. The unbinned M5 Max GPU is expected to come with 48 GPU cores, with performances that is already rivaling a desktop RTX 5090 fully maxed out for a fucking laptop. I'm telling you guys, like, gaming PCs are being outperformed by Apple Silicon laptops. Now, prices are not going to change despite, the RAM crisis, the storage crisis, and the chip shortage that we are currently experiencing. MacBook Air, I think, will continue to start at that $999 price for the base. though you could see it on sale occasionally for like $799. The M5 Pro, that will start at $2,000, and with the M5 Max, you can go as high as $5,000.
Must be funny.
So yeah, I can tell some of you guys are saying, well, you know, Axiom, that sounds like a very, very steep price to pay for a MacBook, don't you think? Well, I do agree with you, and that's where we move on to the budget, lower-end MacBook. Now, we've already talked about the iPhone 17e, the budget iPhone. I forgot to mention the price of that. That should be not changing. But the MacBook will have its time to shine, and this MacBook will be more of like a competitor to like the Chromebooks and the ThinkPads that you have for like school and stuff. Not really too heavy loading. You're not necessarily, you know, gaming on it. This is more for like checking emails, watching YouTube, watching Netflix, you know, the basic stuff you use your computer for. Now, I've mentioned this before. When Apple gives you sort of like a budget-friendly device without being considered cheap, they can actually do pretty well at that. And I do expect them to do well with this lower-end MacBook, which in this video I will be calling the MacBook C, although I have no clue what they're going to be calling it. They might call it just the MacBook, or they might go with MacBook SE, MacBook E, MacBook C. That's just a placeholder for me. So we're just going to, in this video, refer to it as the MacBook C. C stands for cheap. Now, design-wise, we're not entirely sure what this MacBook's gonna look like. We do know from reports from Mark Gurman, Ming-Chi Kuo, and all these others that it will be coming in a bunch of these fun colors, like, you know, pink, blue, yellow, green, you know, to stand out and be more playful. I've heard some reports saying that it's going to come with a design similar to the original 12-inch MacBook that we had 10 years ago. Now, the concept at the time was really good. You know, you got a thin, capable laptop that is affordable. Well, not necessarily affordable. It was priced at $1,300 if I remember correctly. Plus, it had a bunch of other problems. It was so thin, it ran like an Intel M processor. It would constantly lag. There would be thermal throttling. It would get hot. The butterfly keyboard was a piece of fucking shit. It had its own issues. Apple, thankfully, will have learned their lesson on this. And again, with Apple Silicon, it should work a lot better. Design-wise, we're not sure if it's going to have the same design as the 12-inch MacBook from 10 years ago, replacing the butterfly keyboard with the Magic Keyboard that we have currently, or they might recycle the MacBook Pro design from 2016, or perhaps the MacBook Airs from 2018. You know, they can really pick and choose which one they want to go with specifically, but what we do know is that it's going to be a 12-inch display. It's going to have at least one USB-C port. We got no fucking clue if it's going to be two or more than one, but at least there's going to be one USB-C port. We're also not entirely sure if it's going to have either MagSafe for charging or if the only way to charge it is by using USB-C, which I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. If they were to do that, you might as well have two USB-C ports instead of only just having one port, which was one of the big issues with the initial 12-inch MacBook. It was so thin that thermal throttling wasn't the only issue. It only had one port. And I believe this was the first Apple product that removed the headphone jack before the iPhone 7. So they definitely were testing it out. But this one will come with a headphone jack. But it's going to be more of like a nerfed one, not the more higher end ones that you have on like the Airs and the Pros. There's clearly going to be a lot of compromises to keep the MacBook C as affordable as possible. Like with the build, the MacBook C might use a much lower quality aluminum, though it would not surprise me if they used plastic instead of metal. We're going to get a lower quality display. It's not going to be mini LED. It's probably going to be just a standard LCD. And the USB-C ports, whichever number that we're getting, are not going to have Thunderbolt support. And this here is where things get very interesting. Instead of having the usual M chips that we get in other Macs, you know, when you think of Apple Silicon Macs, you usually think of, you know, the M chips, you know, whether that be the M2, the M3, or the M4. The MacBook C will end up breaking that trend and is expected to get an A-series chip, contrary to the other M chips that we have on other Macs. Now, again, I've heard split reports saying that it's going to be the A18 Pro chip. Others are saying that it's going to be the A19 Pro chip. Though, if I were to guess, I think it's going to be an A18 Pro Chip. You know, you want to keep those costs low. So you might as well not give the MacBook C the highest A chip that you can get, rather the previous generation A chip, that being the A18 Pro. Now, the A18 Pro is not necessarily a bad chip. It's comparable to the M1 chip, so it's already a good chip, but it's not like super overwhelmingly high end, but it's still good for what it's worth, and specifically where it shines is the battery life and the efficiency, because this is not meant to be used in a computer. This is meant to be used in a smartphone, and smartphones have very small batteries, so you need as much efficiency as you can possible to make up for that, which means when we're talking about the battery life of the MacBook C, it should be awesome. And to be fair, this might actually be much better than even the MacBook Air or any other Mac that has ever been released. I predict that that's definitely, most certainly going to be a selling point for this MacBook. They're going to sell how good the battery life is, only because it has a chip inside that is meant for an iPhone. Now, as far as pricing is concerned, I've seen that number being between $499 and $599. On X, I stated that it would start at $499 and $399 for education, although there is a very strong possibility that it could start at $599 and $499 for education. So Apple seriously is trying to compete with all the ThinkPads and all the Chromebooks that are out there, you know, for the education space. And hopefully we do see, you know, Apple trying to entice schools to switch from Chromebooks and ThinkPads and just use those MacBooks instead. And I really do hope so, because what the fuck is up with those garbage-ass ThinkPads that they have at the Broward County Public Schools? Laggy, slow, unreliable, students always complain, teachers always complain, and I'm glad that Apple is out there seriously trying to compete with that market. The difference between that and this is a fucking night and day difference. You got a slower but still powerful chip that can even still outperform Intel. You got a nice thin all-new design, either made from plastic or metal. Yes, the screen's going to be lower quality. Yes, the headphone jack's going to be lower quality. It's probably only going to come with 1 or 2 ports, depending if it's going to have MagSafe or not. But this is not like the 12-inch MacBook. This will be eons better. And if I were to recommend people to get a Mac, this will most likely be the one that I will recommend. And besides, who doesn't love pretty colors on their laptop? This MacBook, the MacBook C, will be the one that I will be recommending a lot of people by default, because they don't really need super extra stuff. If you're like checking emails, doing school, or doing fucking whatever it is that is not high demanding, just get the MacBook C. If you have a little extra money and, you know, you want a slightly bigger screen, like a 13 or 15 inch screen, and you really want to see the full potential of Apple Silicon, get the MacBook Air. And if you're a pro user, like I am, you do content creation and you work in the industry of content creation, you're a graphic designer, you do videography, or you're a gamer, MacBook Pro. So there really is a one-size-fits-all for everyone. Everyone is included here. Normies, pro users, and then middle ground. That sounds like a perfect balance to me. So yeah, that's basically what we should be expecting next week in the March event. 3 new MacBooks, 1 new iPhone. So, as always, it's time for me to pass the conversation right back to you. What are you the most excited for? Are you looking forward to the MacBook C? Are you looking forward to getting a new MacBook Air? Are you a pro user and you want the new MacBook Pro? Are you going to be waiting for other products to come out later down the line? Are you looking forward to the iPhone 17e? Are you looking forward to pretty much everything in this keynote? Are you not interested in it whatsoever? Again, love to hear all your thoughts in the comment section down below as always, because I love to end the conversation to you. I do my shit Philip DeFranco style, pass the conversation right back down to you. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to hit that like button down below. And if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe to the channel and ring the little bell for notifications. Don't forget to follow me on all my social medias. Links are in the description below, including to my X, formerly known as Twitter. That is where I'm the most active. That is at AXY0M. I post memes, thoughts, updates, and everything miscellaneous there. Share this video around with your friends, families, boyfriends, girlfriends, enemies, whomever. Definitely helps me out a lot, helps the video grow, and helps grow the channel if you were to share this video with whomever you know. And yes, this does pertain to me as I am without a computer for about 4 months now. I've already explained to you guys multiple times. But once the new M5 Macs finally come out, especially the M5 Pro and the M5 Max, which I am looking at and I am planning on getting, that's when things are really going to ramp up. So exactly the reason why you should subscribe, because you may never know when a video comes out. So subscribe, turn on those notifications to make sure that you guys are notified when that video comes out. And don't forget to send me some news tips and video ideas on what to cover in future videos. I love looking at those requests. DMs are open on X, so you can just send them to me there. But yeah, guys, before this video gets too long, like, subscribe, ring notifications, and until then, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, talk soon, you're awesome.